Let's have a look at Doughty. Doughty? 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 Doughty?
Doughty.
Doughty?
Doughty.
English is so furnishing yourself with this arcane can provide some incredible critical damage bonuses, but it also comes with some serious demands to achieve that. What is it good for, and when is it the right thing to use? I'm TheKengineer, let's solve a practical problem. This video is not sponsored. Instead, you can support the channel by subscribing on Patreon and get more behind the scenes. Now, let's talk Doughty. This is one of the arcanes acquired from Holvania and the Hex, meaning you must have completed the Hex quest to obtain it through gameplay. As a melee arcane, it also requires you to have completed Whispers in the Walls to attach it to a weapon. You can either get the arcane as a 1 in 8 drop from caches, safes, and the Warframe tank Assassination, or purchase it with standing from Eleanor. As 21 arcanes are needed to max it out, the standing method will cost you a full 157,500 standing to achieve. Unless you're actively dodging arcane drops and playing solo all the time, there's a decent chance you'll pick up a couple from missions along the way to that standing, reducing the total needed. Once you've got it, this arcane provides a conditional critical damage bonus. At max rank, for every 10% chance you have of applying a puncture status with a melee attack, that attack gains a final 1.0 times bonus to its critical multiplier. You don't need to hit a full 10% though, fractional bonuses count. More precisely, the final bonus is your status chance as a percent, multiplied by the fraction of your damage that is puncture, then divided by 10%. For example, a weapon with a 33% status chance, where 95% of its damage is puncture, would gain a 33% times 95% divided by 10%, or 3.135 bonus to the critical damage. We see it rounded to 3.1 times bonus in the arsenal and UI. The bonus is constantly updated to reflect your weapon's current stats, with the bonus showing in your buff bar. This bonus takes into account all modifiers to your status chance, as well as all modifiers to your damage distribution. This includes the basic spread of damage on the base weapon itself, any modded bonuses like elemental mods, any fixed external bonuses like progenitor elements, any variable external bonuses like the nourish ability, and any stance modifiers. Not stance modifiers like damage percentage, that wouldn't change the ratio. Nor stance modifiers giving 4 status procs, that's not related to the damage type ratio neither. No, I'm referring to completely hidden damage buffs that apply to seemingly random parts of your moveset. This is a completely hidden game mechanic, applying a typed damage buff with no discernible cause, separate from the written damage buffs from stances, altering your physical weighting. Sometimes this effect is completely nullified. On the Vaykor Sydon, a weapon with considerable puncture percentage, the Bleeding Willow stance has a bonus slash damage on the forward blocking combo, specifically on the second move in the set. However, the lack of slash on the Vaykor Sydon means the bonus damage is multiplied by 0, having no effect on melee Doughty's bonus. In other cases, the effect changes with every swing due to wildly varying bonuses. The Inner Dem, equipped with just melee Doughty and the pointed wind stance, starts at a 0.9 times critical damage bonus. As you attack, it swings through each of 1.3 times, 0.6 times, 0.8 times, and 0.7 times bonus on the forward attacks. The 1.3 times is from a puncture bonus, while the 0.6 and 0.7 are from a slash bonus, and the 0.8 times is most likely a rounding error. On the plus side, at least the game tells us when our bonus changes. I might have had an aneurysm trying to figure out what was going on with the damage numbers otherwise. In order to get the greatest effect out of melee Doughty then, it's calling for a high puncture, high status weapon, modded and wielded to avoid dilating out the puncture ratio, preferably with a stance that either benefits puncture or at the very least doesn't screw it over. The reward for success here is a staggering amount of melee critical damage. The majority of melee weapons are between a 2 times and 3 times base critical damage. With classic modding of Organ Chatter and Gladiator Might, this would bring you to between 5 times and 7.5 times multiplier. Extremely crib modded setups using Galvanized Steel, Organ Chatter, and 5 Tau Forged Violet Archon shards would take such builds to between 13.7 times and 20.6 times critical damage multiplier. With melee Doughty, the Vaykor Sydon, and some generous status chance modding, we can give it a flat bonus of 26.3 times, for example. Using instead the ceramic dagger, it can reach an eye-watering 43 times bonus, or even the hard cap of 50 times with the addition of Citrine's prismatic gem. Suffice to say, we can get some exorbitant bonuses here. However, this all comes at some major costs. Melee Doughty is connected to both your status chance and your puncture weighting. Due to the way physical mods work, you cannot add puncture to a weapon which lacks it. Any puncture modding only scales off the puncture portion of the weapon. In the case of a perfect split between impact, puncture and slash, a 120% puncture mod would only add 40% to the total damage, changing the puncture from about 33% of the damage to about 52%. If it worked like an elemental mod, it would have instead reached about 70% ratio. What this means is that applying any elemental bonuses to your weapon, or using a weapon with low innate puncture, will see you miss out on significant potential with Melee Doughty. Further to this, you also need status chance. It doesn't matter if your stance or weapon deals 4 status procs normally, you need this status chance stat to scale up Melee Doughty. In combination then, this is restricting a weapon away from elemental modding, putting focus into status chance, yet setting up the weapon to deliver the low value status that is puncture. Sure, it applies some final critical chance, but this in itself doesn't make up for how unimpressive the puncture status is. In order for Melee Doughty to be valuable then, it needs to be used in a situation where you can get ample critical chance to benefit from the buff, ample status chance to generate the buff, and ample puncture weighting to qualify for the buff. For most weapons and setups, this is simply a non-starter. While you could slap it onto an average or even decently puncture weapon of reasonable stats, it's an uphill battle to capitalize on that. The Fang Prime, with its 70% puncture, base 26% critical chance, and 26% status chance, is as low as one dares go stat-wise with Doughty. With Weeping Wounds and Juggernus Barbs, Fang Prime would reach 156% status chance, 81.6% puncture, for a critical damage bonus of 12.7 times. This then adds to the base 2.6 times. And in Blood Rush, for critical chance, this setup manages a 140.4% critical chance, applying an average critical multiplier of 21.1 times with its attacks. While impressive, a melee exposure, Prime Fever Strike and Galvanized Steel setup, replacing Doughty, Weeping Wounds and Juggernus Barbs, would score an average critical multiplier of 9 times, or 10.3 times on heavy attacks. That same setup brings in a 405% elemental bonus versus the Puncture build's 63% physical bonus. 9 times 505% is a bit over 45, while 21.1 times 163% is just over 34. While such an elemental setup has thrown away its status chance, it's not like the Puncture setup was using it to apply helpful status effects anyway. I just said a lot of numbers there, so to translate, having a high critical damage sounds nice, but it has to multiply with something. Melee Doughty, by demanding you avoid elemental modding, removes one of the most significant multipliers we have to damage, countering its effect in simple damage calculations. It does this while also removing many of the valuable status procs such elemental modding would give us. Melee Doughty's design is also one of pure damage buffing. Other arcanes provide more game-changing mechanics, things like armor bonuses or the widely loved melee influence. I'll admit, including melee influence in this discussion is almost unfair. That arcane is ludicrously strong in a game where reliable AoE has always translated into power. Why hit one thing when you can hit all the things, right? If you are looking to clear hordes of normal enemies, melee influence is simply superior for damage output because it wins in damage application by default. It also calls for a very moddable and achievable condition compared to the demand for puncture purity of Melee Doughty. So when looking at Melee Doughty, I find it needs not only the stats in its favour, it also needs a situation where more AoE or some other mechanical novelty isn't the answer. We're looking for a niche where puncture purity, super hybrid setups against key single targets achieves our goal better than using the very workable arsenals we already have. Assassinations come to mind as an obvious starting point for single target combat. It's one or a couple super high priority targets that need taking down with excessive force. Only the issue is, which assassination would call for a crit status puncture purity weapon in the first place? By the time you've earned this arcane, the star chart bosses are barely a pebble on the path to greatness. No puncture melee is going to be particularly met of Eidolons, it's 2 monotypes for Prophet Taker. The fragmented boss has a functional DPS cap that such melee shenanigans cannot get around. The FF tank is all about weak spots. Sisters, Liches and Archons again all use heavy attenuation and usually favour other strategies than silly crit melee. No, the more substantial, replayable, rewarding mission where a single target is worth dropping the AoE effect for would be Disruption. Demolishes are targets which ramp up their damage resistance, peaking when your DPS is 20,000 or higher. For some reason though, they don't factor in critical hits, unless working with status effects. What this means is that a weapon with apparently low damage output, except for its critical hits, would bypass a chunk of the damage resistance for free. It's not that melee Doughty is better, it's that non-critical buffs end up being worse here. Weapons with a high critical chance, high status chance, and high puncture can make this work. One such weapon for this is the Vaykor Sydon. While not an overly impressive weapon by default, lacking any Incarnate perks for one, it does have a base 21% critical chance, 33% status chance, and 95% puncture weighting. This enables it to be hybrid modded like this for a Doughty setup. At full combo and stacks, very easy to achieve and maintain, it has a 159.6% critical chance on normal attacks or 205.8% on heavy attacks. Its status chance reaches 237.6%, which, with Jugular Barbs pushing it to 97.3% puncture, translates to a 23.1 times critical damage bonus on top of the base 2.5 times. That's an average critical multiplier of 51.6 times on heavy attack, something we can do for free thanks to Tenekai. In a cheeky twist of nominative irony, this demolishes demolishers. Not only that, Steel Path Acolytes also have a harsh damage reduction mechanic, which once again forgets about critical hits. It turns out that needing 50 times more damage than they signed up for kinda hurts them. Now you can take this further with Kullervo and his Raffle Advance. I'm not going to spend too much time on the combination there because quite frankly, Kullervo makes almost every melee bonkers. When 300% strength means 600% critical chance slapped onto any melee weapon, plus AoE chaining, plus teleports, plus overguard, plus heavy attack bonuses, it's not impressive to say a melee is good when one uses Kullervo. I might as well demonstrate weapons on normal star charts at that point. No, if we're going to consider Raffle Advance with melee Doughty, it needs to make something new happen, not merely buff critical chance on a melee. What if we look at
Pseudo-exalted rework. Okay. Yeah, if you're familiar with Atlas, if you're familiar with Korra, and with Gara, basically they have the pseudo-exalteds, which basically take the melee mods that you have in your melee as a stat stick, and they use that to scale the thing. So now you'll be able to mod them directly, just like you do with an exalted weapon.
For a limited time only, you can get the full benefits of melee Doughty with a stat stick weapon. Seeing as this is going to be overhauled in March, detail of which will be released in a dev workshop in the near future, I'll be as brief as I can with this. I have a larger stat stick guide you can check out for deeper details until the update hits. Some Incarnate weapons carry high base bonuses, which can allow stat stick abilities to do things they couldn't normally do. The most notable here is Gara's Shattered Lash. It's a 0 crit, 0 status ability that can puncture or slash. If we combine it with the Ceramic Dagger and its perk for status chance alongside Raffle Advance and its bonus to critical chance, plus melee Doughty for the bonus to critical damage, we can give Shattered Lash all 3 of the crucial stats it is missing. With a build looking like this, we apply and enhance those stats to a very workable level. Despite Shattered Lash being a slash attack on the sweep, melee Doughty scales off the stat stick, which enables the combo for now, as well as comboing similarly on Atlas and less impressively on Korra. When the update to Pseudo Exalted lands, this interaction will likely be gone, and some new opportunities for builds will certainly rise from the ashes. For now, with Wrathful and Doughty crits, ceramic status, and enemies kindly stood on the same horizontal plane as you, Gara's Shattered Lash gains the ability to red crit with guaranteed slash procs while dealing damage in the millions. So there you have it. The culmination of hours of testing, comparing, trying to find the niches for melee Doughty, plus a surprise dev stream announcement. Doughty is reserved for use with specific puncture priority weapons like the Vaykor Sydon, Telos Boltes, Fang Prime, Harmony and Ceramic Dagger. Build the weapons for a crit status hybrid setup while avoiding elemental bonuses, or outsource the crit chance to Raffle Advance. All this best used in Disruption or with pseudo-exalted abilities until the March update. Post-update, I'll of course cover the new opportunities with those then. I hope this gives you the full perspective on how this arcane shakes down to get the most out of it. Thank you as ever to all channel supporters, and as always, run bounties, earn Doughty, and fight well, Tenno.